The young man behind the counter, Leo, leaned in so close I could smell the faint scent of isopropyl alcohol on his clothes. He glanced nervously at the front door of his tiny, cluttered repair shop before whispering the words that shattered my world. "Ma'am, cancel your credit cards, change every password you have, and then you need to run." My breath hitched. I gripped the worn laminate countertop, my knuckles turning white. "What? Leo, what are you talking about?" He turned my daughter-in-law's phone toward me. He had repaired the spiderweb of cracks on the screen, but what it now displayed was something far more broken. What he showed me didn't just freeze my blood, it stopped my heart. "My name is Eleanor, and I am 68 years old. Until that rainy Tuesday afternoon, I believed my life was a quiet tapestry of contentment. I live in a comfortable, ivy-covered home in Portland, Oregon, with my husband of 45 years, Arthur. He's 70, a retired civil engineer whose mind is still as sharp as the blueprints he used to draw. I myself was a high school history teacher for 4 decades. I thought I understood the patterns of human behavior, the rises and falls of empires, the motivations of betrayal. I was wrong. We have one son, Michael, our only child. 5 years ago, he married Isabella, a woman who seemed to be everything we could have hoped for. She was intelligent, polished, with a sharp degree in finance and a rising career at a downtown consulting firm. Michael met her at a fundraiser, and they were married in a whirlwind less than a year later. I sometimes found her a bit cool, her smile never quite reaching her eyes, but I attributed it to the pressures of her high-stakes job and a personality that was simply more reserved than my own. It all began last Tuesday, when Isabella showed up at our house alone. This was unusual. She and Michael almost always visited together on Sundays. She arrived, looking flustered, her tailored trench coat damp from the persistent Portland drizzle. She was holding her phone, its screen a mosaic of shattered glass. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry to barge in," she said, her voice strained. "I had an accident, the phone slipped, and I desperately need it for a major presentation tomorrow. Michael's out of town on a business trip, and I have no idea where to take it." By coincidence, I had just taken my own phone to a small shop downtown the week before. The owner, Leo, was the son of a dear former colleague from my teaching days, a good kid, clever with electronics. "I know just the place," I offered, eager to help. "I can take it for you. You'd be a lifesaver, Eleanor." "Truly," she said, relief flooding her face. She handed me the device. "The passcode is 2818. Our anniversary." She glanced at her watch. "I have to rush back to the office. Can I pick it up from you tonight?" "Of course, dear. Don't you worry about a thing," I said. I drove downtown to Leo's shop, Express Repairs, a narrow storefront tucked between a bakery and an old bookstore. Leo was hunched over a table, surrounded by the guts of various laptops and tablets. "Mrs. Grant, good to see you again," he greeted me with a warm smile. I explained the situation, and he assured me he could have the screen replaced in a few hours. "I'll come back after my errands," I said, giving him the phone and the passcode. I spent the afternoon at the grocery store and the library, the mundane tasks a stark contrast to the storm that was brewing. Around 4 o'clock, I returned to the shop. Leo was alone. When he saw me, his friendly expression vanished, replaced by something I couldn't place: fear. Deep, unsettling fear. "Mrs. Grant," he said, his voice barely audible. He locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. "The phone is fixed, but I have to show you something." A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. "Is there a problem with the repair?" "Not with the repair, no," he said. He leaned closer, and that's when he whispered his warning. "Cancel your credit cards. Change every password you have, and then you need to run." My mind raced. "Leo, you're frightening me. What is this?" He motioned for me to come behind the counter, shielding the phone from the front window. He unlocked it using the code Isabella had given me and opened a simple messaging app. He navigated to a folder labeled Plan B, and showed me the screen. I read the first message, and the floor seemed to fall away. They were messages between Isabella and my son, Michael, our Michael. They were detailing a plan, not a financial plan, a plan to kill me. Mom is getting more forgetful? A message from Michael read, "It's the perfect time. Dr. Reed is already documenting her memory lapses at my request. No one will question it when it happens." Isabella's reply made me physically ill. Her and your father's life insurance is worth almost $2.2 million. With the sale of the house afterward, we'll have enough to start over. Far away from Portland. Far away from everyone. My legs gave out. I grabbed the counter to keep from collapsing. This can't be true," I mumbled, the words tasting like ash. "It's a joke, a sick joke." "Mrs. Grant, I swear I didn't mean to pry," Leo said, his own hands shaking. When I was testing the touchscreen functions after the repair, a notification banner popped up. I saw the words life insurance and Dr. Reed. I couldn't just ignore it. I looked. "I'm so sorry," I looked. I scrolled, my eyes blurring with tears and horror. They discussed methods, dates, how to make my death look like a common household accident, a fall down the stairs, an overdose of my blood pressure medication. They talked about dosages that would be fatal for a woman my age. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bicycle, the boy I nursed through fevers, was coldly planning my end. "They're planning to kill Arthur too," I whispered, suffocating. The conversation detailed how they would eliminate my husband a few weeks later. "It has to be separate," Michael had written. "An elderly couple dying at the same time is a massive red flag. We wait for the grief to settle, then another accident." Leo, seeing the state I was in, guided me to a stool in the back room and brought me a glass of water. "You have to go to the police, Mrs. Grant. Right now." I shook my head, my mind numb, but the analytical part of me, the history teacher, was already fighting through the shock. They won't believe me. It's the word of a forgetful old woman against my respectable son and his successful wife. They've already laid the groundwork. This Dr. Reed. "Then you have to protect yourself," Leo said, his voice firm. "You have to gather evidence." He was right. My hands trembled so violently I could barely hold my own phone. I took pictures, photograph after photograph of the entire message history. I documented everything. The dates, the times, the specific plans, the casual cruelty, the mentions of Dr. Alistair Reed, our family doctor, who was apparently being manipulated to build a case for my dementia. "Leo," I said, my voice hardening with a resolve I didn't know I possessed. "Can you restore this phone exactly as it was? I don't want them to know. I don't want them to have any idea we've seen this." He nodded, his face grim. We worked for another hour, Leo meticulously ensuring no trace of his discovery was left, wiping the phone system logs. When he handed it back, it looked just as it had when Isabella gave it to me, only with an unblemished screen. Leaving the shop, I felt like I was walking through a nightmare. The gray Portland sky, which I usually found comforting, now seemed oppressive and cold. How could I go home? How could I look at Arthur, my Arthur, and tell him that our only son, the center of our world, was planning to murder us for money? And worse, how could I face Isabella when she arrived to pick up this venomous little device? I drove home on autopilot, my mind racing. I had to plan every step. First, I had to tell Arthur, gently, without sending him into a panic. Second, we had to act, but not rashly. If Michael and Isabella suspected we knew, they might accelerate their plan or simply disappear, leaving us to live in fear. The weight of the betrayal was a physical thing, crushing my chest. My son, the child I carried, the child I loved more than my own life. I parked the car in our driveway, the familiar sight of our home, the rose bushes Arthur so carefully tended, now feeling like a stage set for a tragedy. I had to be calm. This was a game of survival, and I had to be smarter than the two young, ambitious people who thought a forgetful old lady would be easy prey. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I had survived cancer. I had survived 40 years of high school freshman. I would survive this. I walked into the house, holding Isabella's phone like a ticking bomb. Arthur was in the living room, reading, his glasses perched on the end of his nose, the evening news murmuring on the television. The sight of him, so normal, so safe, nearly broke me. "Did you get Isabella's phone sorted, dear?" he asked, not looking up from his book. I swallowed, the lump in my throat burning. "Yes, it's fixed." I had to tell him. "Arthur," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I need you to turn off the television. I need to show you something, and you must promise me you will stay calm." Something in my tone, a coldness he had never heard, made him look up immediately. He muted the TV. "Eleanor, what is it? You're pale as a ghost." I sat beside him on the sofa where we had cuddled our baby boy, and showed him the pictures on my phone. I watched his face as he read. I saw the confusion morph into disbelief, then twist into a visceral horror, and finally into a pain so profound I thought he might shatter. "No," he whispered, his voice choked. "No, there's a mistake. This isn't Michael. Our boy would never, he would never." I didn't want to believe it either. "My love," I said, taking his trembling hands in mine. "But it's them. It's his number. It's the way he writes. And it's her phone, which is right here." Arthur closed his eyes, his breathing ragged. When he opened them, the grief was still there, but beneath it, I saw the engineer, the man who solved problems, the man who built bridges. "What are we going to do?" he asked. I explained my nascent plan. Document everything. Verify our finances, change all our passwords, cancel any shared cards, and investigate this doctor. We had to act as if nothing was wrong, all while building a fortress around ourselves. "Isabella is coming to pick up the phone tonight," I warned. "We have to be normal." "How?" His voice cracked. "How do I look at that woman?" "The same way I pretended to be fascinated by the principal's dull stories for 30 years, I said, attempting a weak joke. "We act. Our lives depend on it." We spent the next hour online. The horror deepened. We found small, regular transfers from our joint savings account to an unknown account. $200 here, $500 there. It totaled over $15,000 in the last 6 months. "Michael has access," Arthur murmured. "We gave him power of attorney last year, remember? After your surgery. Just in case." The irony was suffocating. We had handed him the keys to our destruction. We immediately changed every password, canceled the 2 credit cards Michael was listed on as an authorized user, and called our bank to freeze any transaction over $500 without our verbal, in-person authorization. "What about Dr. Reed?" Arthur asked. Alistair Reed had been our doctor for 20 years. He'd attended Michael's wedding. The thought that he could be involved was almost as painful as our son's betrayal. "I'll make an appointment tomorrow," I decided. Alone. I want to hear what he has to say about my memory. At 7 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. Arthur and I looked at each other, our hearts pounding in unison. He squeezed my hand, a silent promise. I plastered on a grandmotherly smile and opened the door. Isabella stood there, immaculate as ever in a smart pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. That polished exterior now seemed like a grotesque mask. "Eleanor, thank you so much again. How did it go?" "No trouble at all, dear," I said, handing her the phone. "Leo did a wonderful job. The screen is good as new." She powered it on, her eyes quickly scanning it. "Perfect. How much do I owe you?" "Oh, don't be silly," I lied smoothly. "He's an old friend's son. He did it as a courtesy." Isabella hesitated, a flicker of something suspicion in her eyes. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose." "Nonsense. Come in, have some tea. Arthur's just watching the news." "Oh, I can't," she said, a little too quickly. "That presentation tomorrow. I still have so much to review." She clutched the phone. "I just wanted to thank you." "I understand. When is Michael back from his trip?" "Tomorrow night," she replied. Another lie. The messages showed he was in Portland, staying at their condo. "Well, tell him to visit soon. We miss you both." "We will," she smiled. Then, as if just remembering, "Oh, did you ever look into that memory specialist Michael suggested?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression placid. "We haven't had the time." "Why?" Her face, arranged itself into a mask of faux concern. It's just, Michael mentioned you've been forgetting a few things. Names, appointments. He's worried. His imagination, I said with a light laugh. My memory is sharp as ever. I even remember that you wore that exact same beautiful scarf to my cousin's barbecue 2 months ago. I saw it again, a flash of irritation in her eyes before the polite smile returned. Well, it never hurts to check, right? At our age. Of course, dear. We'll think about it. She left. The moment the door clicked shut, I sagged against it, exhausted from the performance. She's pushing the dementia narrative, I told Arthur, who was standing stiffly in the living room. They're building their case. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old house sounded like a threat. I found Arthur in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring into the darkness. I keep seeing him, he said, his voice thick. As a little boy, afraid of thunderstorms, hiding under our bed. What happened to him, Eleanor? What did we do wrong? This isn't on us, I said, hugging him, though the same question was eating me alive. We raised him. This is a choice he made. The next morning, I called Dr. Reed's office, claiming I was having dizzy spells, and secured an appointment for that morning. Before I left, we checked our accounts again, and we found it. A new life insurance policy, taken out in my name 3 months ago. I had never seen it before. How? I whispered, horrified. Arthur pointed to the screen. Look at the signature. It's digital. They forged it. The payout was $1.5 million. The sole beneficiary, Michael. This wasn't a plan. It was already in motion. I walked into Dr. Reed's office, my nerves shot. His nurse smiled. Mrs. Grant, good to see you. The doctor will be right with you. Dr. Reed, a man I'd always trusted, entered the room looking slightly uncomfortable. Eleanor? What a surprise. Michael called me yesterday, actually, said you were resistant to getting checked out. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap. Resistant? That's odd. No, doctor, I came because I am concerned about my memory. He nodded, as if this confirmed his suspicions. Yes, Michael mentioned some episodes, forgetting names, confusion. Curious, I said, my voice calm. Because I don't recall any. Dr. Reed, I've been your patient for 20 years. Do I strike you as a woman with dementia? He hesitated. Well, Eleanor, often the patient is the last to know. And Michael has been very thorough. He's provided documentation, even some video clips. Videos? I was genuinely shocked. Yes, from his phone. You seemed confused about what day it was. You couldn't remember your neighbor's name. My blood ran cold. They had been filming me, likely waiting for any normal, senior moment, and editing it to look like cognitive decline. I leaned forward. Alistair, my son is planning to kill me. The color drained from his face. What? Eleanor, that is a monstrous accusation. I have proof. I took out my phone and showed him the pictures of the messages. I watched as his professional skepticism crumbled into absolute horror. My God, he whispered. My God, Eleanor, I had no idea, I thought. I genuinely thought he was a concerned son. I need to see my file, I demanded. He turned his monitor. There it was. Notes from the last 3 months, all based on reports from son, Michael Grant. Patient exhibits signs of cognitive decline, confusion, temporal disorientation. Recommend neurological evaluation for early onset dementia. This is a lie, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I only wrote what he told me. He defended himself, panicked. I never diagnosed you. But you created a record, Alistair. You created the perfect cover story for my accidental death. He looked truly, deeply ashamed. What do you want me to do? First, you will print out this entire falsified history for me. Then, you will write a new, official note, dated today, stating that you have personally evaluated me and find me to be in perfect cognitive health. And you will give me a copy of that too. He did it without hesitation. Eleanor, if anything happens to you. If anything happens to me, I interrupted, taking the papers. This conversation will be the first thing the police hear. I went from the doctor's office to the bank. I met with the manager, Mr. Davies, a man who had handled our finances for years. Mr. Davies, I said, I need to revoke Michael Grant's power of attorney, immediately. He looked surprised. Mrs. Grant, are you sure? Your son was just in last week, saying you and Mr. Grant were looking to expand his authority, given your health. My health is excellent, Mr. Davies, and I am absolutely sure. I then asked for a review of all activity for the last 6 months. He discovered it quickly. Well, this is irregular. Mr. Grant requested a new credit card in your husband's name 2 weeks ago. Said Mr. Grant had lost his wallet and didn't want to be bothered with the paperwork. And you issued it? Without my husband's signature? Well, he stammered, he had POA. It seemed a reasonable request. Cancel that card, immediately, and block any and all future requests. I left the bank, the scope of their plan unfurling like a shroud. They had the motive, insurance, the means, POA, forged documents, and the cover-up, falsified medical records. As I was driving home, my phone rang. It was Michael. My heart stopped. I pulled over and answered, my voice miraculously steady. Hello, son. Mom, how are you? I just got back from my trip. Isabella told me you helped with her phone. That was so sweet of you. The casualness of his lie was stunning. It was nothing, dear. That's great. Hey, I was thinking, Isabella and I would love to come for dinner tonight. It's been too long. A cold dread washed over me. Why tonight? Had Dr. Reed called him? Of course, dear. I'll make that lasagna you love. Perfect. Oh, and Mom? Did you ever see that specialist I recommended? Isabella said you hadn't. Actually, I said, I saw Dr. Reed this morning. A beat of silence. You did? And what did he say? He said I'm fit as a fiddle. Ran a few tests. Said my memory is perfect for my age. Another, longer silence. Oh, well, that's great. But, maybe a second opinion is in order. Dr. Reed is just a GP after all. We'll see, son. See you tonight. I hung up, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't drive. He was unnerved. My clean bill of health was a problem for him. And now he was coming to our house. To my house. I told Arthur everything. He turned pale. They're coming here? Tonight? Do they suspect? I don't know. But he was rattled. We have to be on our guard. We don't eat or drink anything they bring, and we need to record this. Arthur retrieved his old digital voice recorder. We tested it and hid it under the dining room table, nestled between the table leaf and the tablecloth. I spent the afternoon preparing the lasagna, my stomach in knots. The smell of the ricotta and basil, usually a comfort, made me want to weep. I was cooking his favorite meal for a son who was coming to my home to evaluate how best to kill me. At 7, the doorbell rang. We exchanged a look. Showtime, Arthur muttered. I opened the door. They were all smiles. Michael hugged me, a hug that felt like a violation, and handed me an expensive bottle of wine. Isabella gave me a box of my favorite dark chocolates. The offerings felt like funeral rites. We'll save the wine for dinner, Michael said, settling on our sofa as if he owned it. The conversation was surreal. We talked about the weather, about sports, about anything but the truth. I watched them, every micro-expression. The way Isabella's eyes scanned the room. The way Michael's smile never touched his eyes. So, Mom, he finally said, how exactly did that appointment go? Did Dr. Reed seem thorough? Perfectly thorough. Simple cognitive tests. He said I passed, with flying colors. Strange, Michael mused. He seemed so concerned when I spoke to him. He mentioned Alzheimer's. Really? I feigned surprise. He said nothing of the sort to me. In fact, he said my memory was better than his. Well, that's just it, Mom, he said, his tone shifting to one of condescending concern. You forget. You don't remember the things you forget. Just last week, you called me twice asking the same question, and you left the stove on. None of it was true. I don't recall that at all, I said calmly. Exactly, he said, sharing a knowing look with Isabella. We moved to the dinner table. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I served the lasagna. Arthur opened the wine they brought, but in the kitchen, he performed a sleight of hand, pouring from a different bottle of the same wine we already had open. We would not be drugged in our own home. A toast, Michael said, raising his glass. To family, and to health. I wanted to scream. I raised my glass and pretended to sip. Eleanor, Isabella said, setting her glass down. Michael and I have been talking. We're worried about you two in this big house, alone. It's true, Mom, Michael chimed in. Especially with these lapses. We thought maybe it's time to consider moving to a more manageable place. Or perhaps we could move in here for a while, to help out. There it was, the end game. Get inside the house, get control. How very thoughtful, I said, my voice like ice. But we're perfectly fine, aren't we, Arthur? Absolutely, Arthur said. In fact, we're thinking of taking a long trip, maybe to Florida for the winter. I saw them exchange a panicked glance. A trip would ruin their timeline. A trip? Michael said. I don't think that's wise, Dad, with Mom's condition. My condition is excellent, I cut in. We've already started making plans. The dinner ended. They left the chocolates, which I immediately threw in the outside garbage bin. As soon as the door closed, Arthur and I retrieved the recorder. We listened to the entire conversation. The veiled threats. The constant, insidious push about my dementia. The clear frustration when we mentioned the trip. They're getting desperate, Arthur whispered. The next morning, at 8 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was Isabella, alone. Mary, so sorry to be here this early. I was on my way to work and just wanted to drop these off. She held a large manila envelope. It's just some information Andrew and I gathered. Some brochures for lovely assisted living communities. And some forms. What forms? I asked, not taking the envelope. Just paperwork. That lawyer Michael spoke to drafted a more comprehensive POA. Just in case, one of you has a fall or something and decisions need to be made quickly. Come in, Isabella, I said. She was reluctant, but entered. Arthur was in the kitchen. She brought us forms, dear, I said loudly. Forms to sign away our lives. Isabella paled. That's not what it is. It's for your protection. Arthur took the envelope and spread the papers on the kitchen table. A full, irrevocable power of attorney. Admissions forms for a high-end dementia care facility. We won't be signing these, Isabella, Arthur said, his voice a low rumble. In fact, we've already retained a lawyer to revoke the POA Michael currently has. The mask of concern dropped. For 1 second, I saw her for what she was. Pure, cold rage. I think you're making a mistake, she stammered. You're not well, Eleanor. Get out of my house, I said. She left, and we knew. We had declared war. We didn't wait. I called a lawyer I'd found online, one with no connection to our family, Miss Evelyn Hayes, a former prosecutor. We got an emergency appointment that afternoon. We laid out everything. The messages, the medical file, the insurance fraud, the recording from dinner, the POA forms from that morning. Miss Hayes listened, her face growing grimmer by the minute. Mr. and Mrs. Grant, she said, this is not just fraud, this is a conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence you've gathered is substantial. We are not waiting. We are going to the police, now. She came with us. We met with a Detective Kincaid, a sharp, no-nonsense man who listened to our story and reviewed the evidence. This is the most cold-blooded plot I've seen in 20 years, he said. Miss Hayes is right. You are in immediate danger. He didn't hesitate. I'm assigning a protective detail, and I strongly advise you not to return home tonight. They failed to get you to sign those forms. They know you're resisting. They may escalate, and they may do it tonight. He then proposed a plan. With your permission, I'd like to send a forensics team to your house right now to install covert audio and video surveillance. We need to catch them in the act. We agreed. We went to a hotel downtown, checked in under a false name, while 2 plainclothes officers went to our house to rig the cameras. We sat in the sterile hotel room, the silence deafening. Just as we were about to go back to the house to retrieve a few things while the police were there, my phone rang. It was Michael. I looked at Miss Hayes, who was with us. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Hello, son. Mom, where are you? I just stopped by the house and no one is here. He was there. He was at our house. My blood ran cold. Oh, I improvised. We're just at the mall. Arthur needed new shoes. Oh, okay. Well, I have a surprise for you. I brought by that expensive wine you love, the Special Reserve. I thought we could all have a drink. I'll just wait for you here. How thoughtful, dear. We'll be home in about an hour. I hung up. Kincaid, who we'd patched in, said, He's in the house. The team is pulling out now. The cameras are live. We're going to watch him. We drove to the precinct and were ushered into a dark monitoring room. On a bank of screens, I saw my own kitchen, and there was my son, Michael. He thought he was alone. He was pacing, agitated. Then we watched. We watched as he took a small vial from his pocket and emptied a white powder into the new bottle of surprise wine. We watched him open our medicine cabinet and swap out my blood pressure pills with different, unmarked ones. We watched him take a tiny electronic device from his bag and tape it under the kitchen table. A listening device. He was bugging our house. I made a sound, a choked sob. Arthur held me, his own body rigid with horror. We've got him, Kincaid said, his voice grim. We have it all. He's planting. He's trying to kill us tonight, I whispered. I'm issuing the warrants now, Kincaid said. As his team mobilized, a call came over the radio. A patrol car staked out near our house. We have movement. The female suspect, Isabella, has just arrived. Both subjects are back inside the house. They look agitated. They're grabbing bags. They know, Arthur said. They knew we were lying. They're running. All units, move in, Kincaid commanded. We asked to go. He refused, but let us watch from the live feed of a cruiser-mounted camera. We saw our front door burst open. Michael and Isabella ran out, carrying backpacks. They were sprinting for their car when the police cars, sirens blazing, descended from both ends of the street, cutting them off. Police! Hands where I can see them! I watched, numb, as my son and his wife were forced to their knees on the wet pavement, their hands cuffed behind their backs. It was over. The aftermath was a blur. The police found their backpacks filled with cash, passports, and plane tickets for a one-way flight to a non-extradition country, scheduled to depart the next morning. They found the original bottles of my medication in Michael's bag. The wine was seized. The lab reports came back within hours. The powder in the wine was a lethal cocktail of sedatives and a potent, untraceable heart toxin derived from oleander. The pills he'd planted were a double dose, designed to interact with the poisoned wine and ensure a fatal cardiac event. Detective Kincaid sat with us. Mrs. Grant, I know this is impossible, but you need to understand, if you had gone home tonight, if you had drunk that wine, you would be dead. And he would be on a plane. They let me see him, just once, in a holding cell. He looked small and bitter. You set me up, he hissed. Why, Michael? I asked, the tears I'd held back finally falling. Why? Money, he spat. It was just money. You and Dad, you're just sitting on it, waiting to die. I just wanted to speed up the inevitable. It was Sophia's idea. She showed me how. To kill your own parents. You wouldn't understand, he said, turning away. It was our time. You've had your life. I didn't recognize the man in front of me. He was a stranger. The final, sickening twist came a week later. Sophia, facing a life sentence, made a deal. She gave a full confession. She testified that the plan was indeed hers. But she also provided evidence that Michael was planning to kill her as well, once they had the money. He had another girlfriend waiting in the wings. He was cleaning house. But the worst was yet to come. The lab analyzed a hair sample I provided, the oleander toxin. It was present. Not just from that night. I had been being poisoned, in small, gradual doses, for over 3 months. All those memory lapses Michael had been reporting to Dr. Reed, the dizziness, the confusion he'd been filming. It wasn't dementia. It was the poison. My son had been slowly, methodically poisoning me for months, building his case, laying the groundwork for a death that everyone would attribute to a forgetful old woman in declining health. We sold the house. We couldn't stay there. We moved to a small, bright apartment across town. We started over. Arthur and I, we learned to live with the scar. Michael was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. Isabella, for her cooperation and the prior murders of her own family members that were uncovered, will never see the outside of a prison wall. It's been 4 years. Arthur and I take walks. We travel. We joined a book club. We are living. But the grief for the son we lost, the boy who loved thunderstorms and who we taught to ride a bike, is a quiet, permanent resident in our hearts. The betrayal didn't come from a stranger in the shadows. It came from our own blood, from the child we raised and loved unconditionally. It taught me the most brutal of all history lessons, that evil isn't always a monstrous figure. Sometimes it's a familiar face. Sometimes it's the person you taught to say, "I love you." We learned that trust, once shattered, can never be perfectly rebuilt. But we also learned that a foundation built over 45 years, a foundation of shared love and respect between two people, can withstand the unthinkable. It can bear the weight of the heaviest sorrow, and it can, in time, become the platform from which you choose to live again.